I woke up on a gurney with my ribs feeling crushed and my hands coated in blood. The first thing my mother asked was not if I was okay, but to transfer money immediately so her card would not be declined at the first-class lounge. Staring at my phone through the haze of sirens, I realized I was just a wallet with a heartbeat, but while she worried about her status, I found the financial kill switch. My name is Arissa Oakmere, and the first thing I noticed when consciousness clawed its way back was the sterile, aggressive brightness of the overhead lights in the Northbridge Regional Medical Center. I was not a person anymore. I was a collection of symptoms and vital signs strapped to a rigid board. My neck was locked in a cervical collar that felt like a vice, and every breath I took sent a jagged spike of agony through the left side of my chest. I did not need a doctor to tell me the damage. I am a risk analyst by trade. I assess structural failures for a living. I knew exactly what was happening inside my own skin. 3 ribs were fractured. My shoulder was a landscape of deep tissue bruising. My head felt clear, terrifyingly so, like a high-definition camera focusing on a disaster site. The memory of the impact was not a blur. It was a series of high-resolution images stamped into my brain. I remembered the intersection at 4th and Main. I remembered the light was green for me. I remembered the massive black SUV ignoring the red light on the cross street. It had been traveling at least 50 miles per hour. I remembered the sound, which was not like the movies. It was not a crunch. It was a bomb going off. The sickening pop of metal buckling. The explosive hiss of the side curtain airbags deploying. The shower of tempered glass that sounded like hail on a tin roof. My phone had been mounted on the dashboard. When the SUV slammed into my driver's side door, the mount snapped. I watched the device fly across the cabin in slow motion before it disappeared into the footwell. The silence that followed the crash was heavier than the noise. In that silence, my first thought was not about my legs or my spine. It was a frantic, screaming alarm in my mind. Luma, my daughter. The image of her flashed before me, safe at home with the babysitter. Thank God. If she had been in the car seat behind me, the intrusion of the other vehicle into the cabin would have killed her. The thought made my heart rate monitor spike, the rapid beep echoing in the trauma bay. Easy, honey. You are safe. You are at Northbridge. The voice belonged to a nurse standing over me. Her badge read, Janelle. She had kind eyes but the efficient, no-nonsense hands of someone who saw tragedy every single day. She was cutting the sleeve of my blouse to insert an IV line. We are going to get you scanned in a minute, Janelle said, her voice steady. Is there someone we should call? A husband? A partner? I tried to speak, but my throat tasted like copper and airbag dust. I swallowed, wincing as the movement pulled at my bruised neck muscles. Curtis, I rasped. Curtis Whitmere, my husband. Okay, I will get the doctor to... No, I interrupted, the word coming out sharper than I intended. Not yet. I need my phone first. Please. Janelle looked at me, hesitating. She probably thought I was in shock. Clinging to a familiar object, she did not know that my phone was not just a communication device. It was the command center of a war I did not even know I was fighting until this very moment. It was in the footwell, I whispered, fighting the urge to cough because I knew coughing would feel like being stabbed. Please, I need to check something, Janelle nodded, likely humoring the traumatized patient. She reached into a clear plastic belongings bag at the foot of the gurney. She pulled out my smartphone. The screen protector was cracked, a spiderweb of fissures running from corner to corner, but the display lit up when she handed it to me. I will go call your husband, Janelle said softly, stepping back to give me a moment of privacy amidst the chaos of the ER. I gripped the phone. My fingers were sticky. I looked down and saw dried blood on my knuckles. It was my blood. I stared at it, strange and foreign, before I could unlock the screen. The device vibrated in my hand. A call was coming in. The caller ID displayed a photo of a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a dazzling, practiced smile. Mom. For a split second, a wave of relief washed over me. She knew, somehow, she knew I was hurt. Mothers had that intuition, right, that psychic connection. She was calling to tell me she was on her way, that she would handle everything, that she would sit by my bed until Curtis got here. I swiped green and put the phone to my ear. "Orissa, finally," the voice on the other end said. There was no panic, no concern, just a sharp edge of irritation, barely concealed by a veneer of charm. Background noise filtered through the hum of hairdryers, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of polite conversation. She was at a salon, or perhaps an airport lounge. "I have been trying to reach you for 20 minutes. Where are you?" I opened my mouth to say, "I am in the trauma bay. I might have internal bleeding. I was hit by a car." But Delaney Oakmere did not leave gaps in conversation for other people to speak. "Listen, I am at the airport," she continued, her voice dropping to that conspiratorial whisper she used when she wanted something. "I am checking in for the flight to Cabo, and the agent is being absolutely ridiculous about the baggage allowance. I need to upgrade to first class to get the extra weight waived. Plus, honestly, I cannot sit in coach with my back the way it is. I have sacrificed enough for everyone else, haven't I? I deserve a little leg room." I stared at the ceiling tiles. One of them had a water stain shaped like a map of Texas. The pain in my ribs throbbed in time with my pulse. "Orissa, are you listening?" Her tone sharpened. "My card got declined. It is humiliating. There is a line of people behind me. I need you to transfer $2,000 to the joint account. Right now. Do not make me wait." The words hung in the air, suspended between life and death. "Mom," I managed to say, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "I was in an accident." "Oh, God. Do not start with the drama today." Delaney sighed, the sound of ice cubes rattling in a glass audible through the speaker. "You are always so dramatic when you do not want to help me. Remember when you had that migraine right before my birthday dinner? Look, I am standing at the counter. The lady is looking at me like I am a pauper. Just do the transfer. You can tell me about your little fender bender later. My card cannot be declined. Orissa, it is about appearances. You know how hard I have worked to maintain our standing." Our standing. I looked at the blood on my hand. It was drying, turning a dark, rusty brown. "You want me to transfer money?" I repeated. "Yes, 2,000, maybe 3, just to be safe. I might want to do some shopping at duty-free. Hurry up. I will hold." She did not ask if I was hurt. She did not ask if Luma was in the car. She did not ask if I was alone. She asked for $3,000 because she did not want to be embarrassed in front of a gate agent. I lay there, the sounds of the hospital rushing back and the squeak of rubber shoes on linoleum, the distant wail of another ambulance arriving, the rhythmic beep of my own survival. And in that moment, the fog lifted. It was a violent clarity. I realized I had never been her daughter. I was an asset. I was a resource to be mined. I was a wallet with a heartbeat. "I cannot do that, Mom," I said. My voice was steady. It surprised me. "Excuse me." The sweetness evaporated instantly. "What do you mean, you cannot? You have the money. I know you got that bonus last month. Do not lie to me. I raised you better than that. After everything I've done for you, I carried you for 9 months. I gave up my modeling career for you. And you are going to let your mother stand here and be humiliated over a few $1,000s. "I have to go," I said. "Don't you dare hang up on me. Orissa Oakmere. If you do not transfer that money in the next 5 minutes, I am going to—" I pressed the red button. The silence on the line was instant. I lowered the phone to my chest, breathing shallowly to spare my ribs. A tear leaked from the corner of my eye, hot and stinging, but I wiped it away with my bloody thumb. "No panic," I whispered to the empty air. "Panic is a luxury." It was a mantra I used at work when a risk model turned red. Panic leads to bad decisions. Panic blinds you to the variable that matters. And right now, the variable that mattered was not the car accident. That was just physics. The real variable was the predator on the other end of the phone line. I unlocked my phone again. My thumb hovered over the banking app icon. I tapped it. The little circle spun for a second before the dashboard loaded. Redwood Integrity Solutions. That was where I worked. We traced fraud. We found the leaks in corporate accounts. We found the ghost employees and the inflated invoices. I had spent 10 years finding other people's leaks, yet I had allowed a hemorrhage in my own life to go unchecked for a decade. I did not go to the Transfer tab. Instead, I navigated to the bottom right corner, to the Settings menu. I scrolled past notifications, past paperless statements, straight to the section labeled Security Access. I tapped on Authorized Users/Linked Overdraft Protection. The screen loaded, and there it was, a name that looked like a shackle. Delaney Oakmere Status Authorized User. Access Level Full. Overdraft Link Active. It was a trap I had walked into willingly years ago. "It is just for emergencies. Honey," she had said, "in case you are ever in the hospital and need me to pay a bill for you. Or if I have a medical emergency and cannot reach my purse." The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. I was in the hospital. I was in an emergency. And she was using the access not to help me, but to fund a first-class seat to a vacation while I bled on a stretcher. The accident had done more than break my ribs. It had broken the conditioning. It had shattered the carefully constructed reality where I believed her love was real, provided I paid the subscription fee. The crash had shaken the foundation, and now, looking at the cracks, I could see the rot underneath. She had been draining me, not just today, always. The little loans for electricity, the car insurance payments she forgot to mail, the times her card mysteriously stopped working at dinner, leaving me to cover the bill with a promise to pay me back that never materialized. It was financial grooming. She had trained me to accept this. She had trained me to believe that my financial stability was hers to harvest. I took a breath. It hurt. Good. The pain was grounding. I stared at the option on the screen. It was a small, red link text at the bottom of her profile card. Revoke authorization. My finger trembled. Not from the shock of the crash, but from the shock of what I was about to do. This was the nuclear option. This was not just saying no. This was cutting the cord. This was an act of war. If I pressed this, her card would not just be declined for the upgrade. It would be dead. The overdraft protection that automatically covered her excesses from my savings account would vanish. She would be standing at that counter with zero purchasing power. I thought about Curtis. I thought about how he had asked me last month why our savings were not growing as fast as our dual income suggested. I had lied. I had told him it was inflation. I had protected her. I thought about Luma. If I had died today, Delaney would have had full access to my accounts before my body was even cold. She would have drained Luma's college fund to pay for a funeral that focused more on her grief than my life. The realization made my hands steady. I was done being the victim. I was done being the host. I pressed my thumb against the glass, directly on the words, "Revoke authorization." A confirmation box popped up. "Are you sure this will immediately terminate all access for Delaney Oakmere? Any pending transactions initiated by this user may be declined. This action cannot be undone without a new notarized consent form." I did not hesitate. I did not blink. I tapped confirm. The loading circle spun for 2 seconds, 1, 2, and then the screen refreshed. The name Delaney Oakmere disappeared. The section read, "No authorized users." I locked the phone and let it rest on my stomach. The deed was done. The line was cut. "Okay," I whispered. Nurse Janelle returned, pulling back the curtain. "I reached your husband. He is on his way. He sounded terrified. Poor man. He is about 15 minutes out." "Thank you." "Janelle," I said. My voice was stronger now. "Can I ask you for one more favor?" "Of course, honey. Anything." "When my mother calls back," I said, looking Janelle dead in the eye, "and she will call back, do not let her in, no matter what she says. She is not here to see me." Janelle looked at me, confused for a moment, and then her expression hardened. She had been an ER nurse for 20 years. She knew what family drama looked like. She nodded once, A sharp, professional acknowledgement. "Understood," Janelle said. "Rest now. The doctor is coming." I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I waited for the phone to ring again. I knew exactly what was happening 3,000 miles away at an airport counter. The card was being swiped, the machine was beeping, the agent was shaking her head, and Delaney Oakmere was realizing that for the first time in her life. The ATM was out of order. Let the war begin. Lying there with the sterile hum of the hospital monitors acting as a metronome, my mind drifted backward, not to the crash, but to the architecture of the disaster that was my relationship with my mother. It did not start with a declined credit card. It started with silence. When I was 11 years old, I won the state spelling bee. I remember standing on the stage, clutching the trophy that was half the size of my torso, searching the crowd for Delaney. When I found her, she was beaming. She rushed the stage. Her perfume, Chanel No. 5, always heavy, always expensive, enveloping me. She hugged me so tight my ribs ached. A foreshadowing I could not have understood then. "That is my girl," she announced to the room, to the other parents, to the cameras. Smart like her mother. We went out for ice cream. She bought me a new dress. For 3 days, the sun shone directly on me, but 2 months later, I brought home a report card with a B- plus in history. Just one. The rest were A's. I walked into the kitchen, eager to show her the math score, but her eyes snagged on the history grade like a sweater on a nail. She did not yell. Delaney Oakmere never yelled. Yelling was for people who lost control. She simply set the paper down, turned her back to me, and continued chopping vegetables. For a week, I was invisible. She made dinner. She did laundry. But she did not look at me. She did not speak to me. I was a ghost haunting my own house until I brought home a perfect test score. Then, the lights came back on. The hug returned. The warmth flooded back. The lesson was surgically implanted before I even hit puberty. Love is not a baseline. Love is a transaction. You earn it with performance. You maintain it with compliance. If you fail, the currency is withdrawn. I carried this programming into adulthood like a dormant virus. I skipped the university experience my friends had. I went to community college, working 2 jobs. Because Delaney said she could not support me. Her investments were tied up. I did not mind. I was good at numbers. I found comfort in them. Numbers did not give you the silent treatment. If an equation did not balance, there was a reason. A logic you could trace. I graduated early and landed a junior analyst role at Redwood Integrity Solutions. I was 21. Making $45,000 a year, and felt like I owned the world. That was when the financial grooming shifted from emotional to literal. It began with the small, micro-loans, a text message on a Tuesday, "Honey, the electric bill is due and the transfer from my brokerage account is stuck pending until Friday. Can you cover the $150 I will pay you back the second it clears?" "I am your mother," she would say if I hesitated. "After everything we have been through," the phrase, "after everything we have been through," was her master key. It unlocked my guilt. It unlocked my wallet. I paid the electric bill. She paid me back 3 weeks later, but only $100. I never asked for the other $50. It felt petty to haggle with the woman who gave me life. Then came the car insurance. Then the emergency dental work. The requests became a background noise to my life, a monthly subscription to her affection. When I was 22, she sat me down at a bistro where she ordered the most expensive wine on the menu and slid a form across the table. It was for her primary checking account. "I need you to sign as an authorized backup," she said, swirling the Pinot Noir. "Just for safety. What if I am in a coma? What if I am traveling and lose my wallet? I just need to link your savings as an overdraft protection. It is just a safety net. Rissa, we will never actually use it." I looked at the paper, my analyst brain. The part of me that hunted fraud for Redwood screamed that this was a bad idea. You do not link a solvent entity to a volatile one. But then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her skin was soft, her manicure perfect. She looked at me with those wide, desperate eyes that she usually saved for men she was trying to charm. "Please," she whispered. "I trust you more than anyone." I signed. I signed because I wanted to be the good daughter. I signed because I wanted to stay in the light. The safety net became a siphon. It was subtle at first, a $30 overdraft fee here, a $50 charge there. I would see the deductions on my statement, overdraft protection transfer. D. Oakmere. I never brought it up. If I did, the silence would return. The cold shoulder would freeze me out. So I absorbed it. I worked overtime. I took freelance consulting gigs. I adjusted my own budget to accommodate her lifestyle. I told myself she was just having a hard year. Then I met Curtis. Curtis was solid. He was a landscape architect grounded, literally and figuratively. He did not understand the intricate dance I did with Delaney. He saw the math, not the history. "Rissa," he said one night, looking at our joint budget on his laptop, "why is there a $400 transfer to your mom again? That is the third time this month." I was washing dishes, my back to him, scrubbing a plate so hard I thought it might crack. "She is just having some cash flow issues with the estate," I lied. "She will pay us back when the quarterly dividends come in." "There are no dividends, are they?" Curtis asked gently. "She is my mother, Curtis," I snapped, turning around. "She is struggling. I am not going to let her starve." He dropped it. He loved me enough to let me have my blind spot. But looking back, I see the worry in his eyes. He saw the parasite attached to his wife. But he knew he could not rip it off without hurting the host. The cycle escalated when I got pregnant with Luma. Delaney was ecstatic, not because she wanted to be a grandmother, but because a baby was a prop. She threw the baby shower, insisting on a high-end venue we could not afford. She invited her friends, not mine. She posted photos of herself holding my bump, captioning them "Grandma's Little Angel," raking in hundreds of likes. But when Luma was born, when the reality of sleepless nights and colic set in, Delaney vanished. I remember one night, 3 weeks postpartum, sobbing on the kitchen floor. Curtis was on a work trip. I had not slept in 40 hours. I called her. "Mom, please," I begged. "I just need someone to hold her for 2 hours so I can sleep. Just 2 hours." "Oh, honey, I wish I could," she said, her voice breezy. "But I have a yoga retreat this weekend in Ojai. It is non-refundable. You will figure it out. You are strong." 2 days later, my bank notification pinged. Overdraft transfer, $800. She had used her card to pay for the wellness retreat spa package, and my account had covered it. I sat there, nursing a screaming infant, staring at the notification. That was the first time I opened a spreadsheet file named projected_expenses, XLS, and renamed it simply the ledger. I started tracking every transfer, every borrowed amount, every time she used my credit to co-sign something without telling me until the last minute. The numbers were staggering. Over 8 years, she had siphoned nearly $60,000. That was a down payment on a house. That was Luma's college fund. That was a retirement plan. But I still did not stop it. I categorized it. I annotated it. I watched the graph line go up and up. A red trajectory of exploitation. I could not call it theft. Calling it theft meant admitting that my mother was a thief. Calling it abuse meant admitting I was a victim. And I was Arissa Oakmere, the risk analyst. I was the smart one. I was the strong one. Smart people do not get conned by their own mothers. So I told myself it was familial duty. I told myself it was the cost of keeping the peace. I told myself I was managing the risk, lying on the gurney in the trauma bay. Listening to the beep of the machinery, I finally let the truth settle in my chest. Heavier than the broken ribs. I was not managing the risk. I was the risk. My compliance was the asset she was trading on. She knew exactly how far she could push. She knew that if she took too much, I would panic. But if she took just enough just below the threshold of catastrophe, I would absorb it. She had calibrated her greed to my salary increases. When I got a raise, her emergencies got more expensive. It was not random. It was algorithmic. "I am not stupid," I whispered to the ceiling, the words tasting like ash. I was programmed. The realization was not a wave of sadness. It was a cold, hard click, like the safety coming off a weapon. The love I had been chasing since I was 11 years old did not exist. There was no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There was just an invoice. The nurse, Janelle, walked by the curtain, checking on another patient. I looked at my phone, dark and silent on my stomach. The connection to the bank was severed. The authorization was revoked. For the first time in 14 years, my money was mine. But the fear that gripped me wasn't about the money. It was about what happened next. Delaney Oakmere was a creature of comfort. I had just cut off her oxygen supply. She would not just be angry, she would be dangerous. A narcissist denied their supply does not grieve. They attack. I closed my eyes and visualized the spreadsheet on my laptop at home, the ledger. It was no longer just a record of my shame. It was evidence. Bring it on, I thought, the sedative finally starting to pull me under. I have the receipts. The screen of my phone was the only source of light in my small, curtained universe within the trauma bay. My thumb hovered over the secondary settings, the ones most people never bothered to check. I had already initiated the revocation of the main authorization, but I knew Delaney. She was like water. She would find any crack, any seep, any tiny fissure in the system to get what she wanted. I needed to seal the vessel completely. I navigated to the biometric security tab. There it was. Face ID. Access enabled for secondary device. She had added her iPad to my account 3 years ago. She had told me it was so she could deposit checks for me if I was ever out of town. It was a lie. It was a backdoor. If I changed my password, she could still get in with her face. If I changed my PIN, she still had a retinal bypass. I tapped the toggle switch. A prompt appeared, disable biometric access for all secondary devices. This will require a password to re-enable. I typed in my password. It was long. A string of alphanumeric characters I had memorized but never written down. As I hit the final character, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It was not the sharp, grinding agony of my fractured ribs. It was lighter. It was the feeling of a weight being cut loose. Confirm. The toggle slid to the left. The green indicator turned white. I went back to the main dashboard. I refreshed the page. I needed to see it. I needed the visual confirmation that the parasite had been detached. The app cycled, a little spinning wheel of doom that felt like it lasted a lifetime. Then, the page reloaded. Next to the name, Delaney Oakmere. The status indicator had changed. For a decade, it had been a bright, pulsating green dot, signifying active/authorized. Now, it was a flat, lifeless gray, unlinked. The word sat there on the high-resolution screen, small and unassuming, yet it carried the weight of a court verdict. I locked the phone and let my hand drop to the mattress. The adrenaline that had sustained me through the initial shock of the crash and the confrontation was beginning to recede, leaving behind the raw, unadulterated reality of my injuries. My chest felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire. Every inhale was a negotiation with pain. My shoulder throbbed with a deep, sickening rhythm. But the other pain, the crushing, suffocating weight of guilt that usually accompanied any denial of my mother's wishes, it was gone. It had vanished as completely as the green dot. I waited for it to come back. I waited for the familiar voice in my head to scream that I was a bad daughter, that I was ungrateful, that I was abandoning the woman who gave me life, nothing, just silence, and the rhythmic beeping of the cardiac monitor. "Janelle," I called out. My voice was weak, barely a whisper. But the nurse heard me. She stepped back inside the curtain instantly. "I am here, honey. Is the pain getting worse?" "Yes," I said. I did not apologize for asking. I did not preface it with, "I am sorry to bother you," or "I can wait if you are busy." I simply stated the fact. "I need something for it. Please." Janelle nodded, checking the IV line. "Doctor ordered fentanyl. I can push a dose now. It will make you floaty." Floaty is good, I said. Floaty is fine. As she administered the medication, I felt the cold liquid move up my arm. Within 30 seconds, the sharp edges of the room began to blur. The grinding in my ribs dulled to a distant ache, but my mind remained sharp. The clarity I had found in the wreckage was impervious to narcotics. I picked up my phone again. I opened the notes application. I needed to see the damage. I needed to quantify the extraction. I started typing. My thumbs moving slower now, but with deliberate precision. I listed them out. The expenses I had absorbed over the last 5 years. The ones I had buried under the heading of family obligations. The club at Oak Creek. $450 a month. She did not play golf. She went there to drink mimosas and gossip with women she secretly despised. Premium PPO health insurance upgrade, $600 a month. She insisted the standard plan I paid for was too restrictive and that she needed access to specialists who serve champagne in the waiting room. Seasonal wardrobe refresh, $2,000 a quarter. She called it networking expenses. Ojai wellness retreats, $3,000, twice a year. I stared at the numbers. They were not just figures. They were hours of my life. They were weekends I worked instead of taking Luma to the park. They were the vacation Curtis and I never took. They were the house in a better school district we did not buy. The total rose like a toxic tide, choking off the oxygen in my financial life. I was not just her daughter, I was her employer, and I had just fired her. The phone in my hand buzzed. It was a harsh, angry vibration against my palm. I looked at the notification. Mom, mobile card declined. Fix it now. I read the words. There was no punctuation other than the periods. All caps. It was a scream in text form. I looked at the timestamp. It was 1 minute ago. She was standing at the counter. The agent had swiped the card. The system had rejected it. The agent had probably smiled that polite, pitying smile they give to people whose fantasies exceed their credit limits. Delaney would be turning red. Not from embarrassment, she did not do embarrassment, but from rage. She did not ask if I was okay. She did not ask if I was out of surgery. She did not ask if I was conscious. She just commanded, fix it, like I was a broken appliance, like I was a vending machine that had swallowed her dollar bill. I did not reply. I let the screen go dark. 30 seconds later, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was a longer vibration. Mom. Mobile. I know you are reading this. I saw the receipt status. Do not play games with me, Orissa. I am 5 minutes away. I am coming to the hospital. 5 minutes. I stared at the ceiling tiles. If she was 5 minutes away, she was never at the airport. She had lied. She had probably been at the mall across town, or perhaps at a brunch spot nearby, using the airport story to add pressure, to make the request seem urgent and time-sensitive, or maybe she had driven like a maniac the moment the first call ended. It did not matter. What mattered was the realization that hit me then. Colder than the air conditioning in the trauma bay. She was not coming to the hospital because her daughter was injured. She was not rushing to my bedside to hold my hand or brush the hair off my forehead. She was coming to reset the breaker. She was coming to kick the machine until it started dispensing cash again. She was coming to fix the broken ATM. I laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound that hurt my chest, but I could not stop it. It was the laugh of someone who sees the absurdity of their own tragedy. Janelle, I said. The nurse turned from the computer terminal in the corner. Yeah, feeling that medicine yet? I am, I said. My tongue felt thick, but I forced the words to be precise. She is coming. My mother. Janelle's face tightened. I told the front desk, family only, but if she is your mother... No, I interrupted. You do not understand. I do not want you to just stop her. I want you to let her in. Janelle looked confused. You just said, I want her to see me, I said, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But I do not want to talk to her, Janelle. I need you to make this room look like the end of the line. I need you to pull the shades. Turn the volume down on the heart monitor so it is just a quiet beep. Dim the lights. You want to play possum, Janelle said slowly. a spark of understanding lighting up her eyes. I want to see what she does when she thinks no one is watching, I said. I want to see who she is when she thinks the ATM is out of order permanently. Janelle looked at me for a long moment. She looked at the bruises blooming on my shoulder. She looked at the phone in my hand that I was gripping like a weapon. She did not ask questions. She did not preach about forgiveness. She was an ER nurse. She knew that sometimes the worst trauma didn't come from car accidents. It came from the people who were supposed to love you. Okay, Janelle said, moving to the window. She yanked the blackout curtain shut, plunging the room into a twilight gloom. She reached up and adjusted the overhead light until it was just a faint amber glow. She went to the monitor tower and tapped a few buttons. The aggressive, rhythmic beeping softened to a barely audible pulse. Lay back, she commanded gently. Close your eyes, relax your jaw. If you tense up, the monitor will show your heart rate spiking. You have to be ice. Can you do that? I am an analyst, I whispered, settling my head back against the thin pillow. I watch data. I do not make noise. Good, Janelle said. She adjusted the sheet, pulling it up to my chin, covering the phone I still clutched against my stomach. You are sleeping. You are heavily sedated. You are not responsive. Leave the rest to me. I closed my eyes. Darkness took me, but my ears were wide open. I slowed my breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. It was a technique I used before board presentations. Now, I was using it to prepare for the most hostile negotiation of my life. I waited. I listened for the sound of heels on the linoleum. I listened for the scent of Chanel No. 5. I listened for the monster. The curtain parted not with the violent intrusion I expected, but with a frantic, breathless rustle. It was Curtis. My husband looked like he had run the entire way from his office. His tie was askew, his forehead slick with sweat, and his eyes were wide with a terror that made my own heart stutter. He saw the neck brace, the IV lines, and the shallow rise and fall of my chest, and he made a sound that was half sob, half gasp. Rissa, he breathed. Rushing to the bedside, he hovered over me, afraid to touch, afraid he might break what was left of me. Oh God. Rissa, the police said it was a T-bone. They said the other car didn't even break. I fought the fog of the fentanyl. I needed to be sharp. I reached out with my good hand and gripped his fingers. I squeezed as hard as I could, which wasn't very hard, but it was enough to stop his spiraling. I am okay, I whispered. My voice was raspy, dry as sandpaper. Listen to me, Curtis. Look at me. He nodded, tears spilling onto his cheeks. I am here. I am right here. She is coming, I said. Curtis froze. The grief on his face shifted instantly to a complicated mix of guilt and confusion. He looked away, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. She called me, he admitted, his voice dropping. Before I even knew about the accident, she called me at work. I felt a cold spike in my stomach that had nothing to do with the internal bruising. What did she say? She was screaming, Curtis said, shaking his head as if trying to dislodge the memory. She said you were being difficult. She said you cut her off. She told me to talk sense into you, to make you do the transfer, or she was going to... He stopped, swallowing hard. Or she was going to what? Curtis. She said she would make a scene, he whispered. She said she would call your boss at Redwood and tell them you were mentally unstable. She said she would ruin us if I didn't get you to fall in line. I closed my eyes for a second. Of course, that was the lever. She knew Curtis was terrified of conflict. She knew he valued peace above all else. She was weaponizing his gentleness against me. Curtis, I said, opening my eyes and locking onto his. I need you to be brave, just for tonight. I'll deal with her, he said, squaring his shoulders sweetly brave, but completely ineffective against a predator like Delaney. I'll tell her to leave. No, I said, you can't just tell her to leave. She won't. She'll push harder. We need to let her talk herself into a corner. I drew him in closer. biting back a hiss as the motion pulled at my ribs. Get your phone out. Silent mode. Open the voice recorder. Now. He fumbled in his pocket. Moving on instinct. Okay, it's running. Keep it in your pocket. I said, don't spar with her. Don't try to justify me. Don't defend me. Just let her speak. And Curtis, this is the part that matters most. I waited until his eyes locked onto mine. Do not sign anything, I said, shaping every syllable with care. No matter what she says, no matter what she slides in front of you, don't sign, don't agree, don't even nod. Why would I sign anything he asked? Genuinely confused. Because she isn't coming to visit. I said, she is coming to close a deal. I signaled for Janelle. The nurse appeared instantly, as if she had been waiting in the wings. He is on board, I told her. Janelle nodded and spoke into the small radio clipped to her scrub top. Security to Trauma Bay 4. We have a code violet situation potentially developing. Limit access. I want a log of everyone who steps onto this floor, time in, time out, and make sure the hallway cameras are recording to the secure server, not just the loop. Code violet, Curtis asked. Violent or combative patient or visitor, Janelle explained calmly. Or in this case, a hostile legal threat. I had one more move to make. My phone was still in my hand, hidden under the sheet. I pulled it up, shielding the screen from the door. I found the contact for Elias Oakmere, my grandfather, Delaney's father, the man she hated because he was the only person on earth whose money she could not touch and whose will she could not bend. He had been distant for years, mostly because Delaney made it impossible for him to be around without causing a war. But I knew he watched. I knew he waited. I typed a single line. If she comes, I need you. I hit send. Put the phone away, Janelle hissed softly. I hear them. I shoved the phone under my hip. Curtis, sit in the chair, hold my hand, look devastated. I am devastated, he mumbled, sinking into the plastic chair. Good. Stay that way. I let my head loll back against the pillow. I relaxed my facial muscles, letting my mouth fall open slightly. I slowed my breathing, channeling the yoga classes I had taken years ago. Inhale 2, 3, 4, exhale 2, 3, 4, the sounds of the hospital, the distant pages. The squeaking carts faded into the background, replaced by a singular rhythmic sound approaching from the corridor. Click, clack, click, clack. It was the sound of stilettos on vinyl flooring, fast, aggressive. The tempo of a woman who believes the world should rotate at her pace. Then, voices, loud ones. I do not care what your policy is. It was her, Delaney. Her voice carried the imperious, shrill tone she used on waitresses and flight attendants. I am her mother. She is in critical condition. Do you want to be the one to explain to a judge why you kept a mother from her dying child? Ma'am, you need to lower your voice. A security guard's baritone rumbled. This is a trauma unit. Do not shush me, Delaney shrieked. I am distraught. My daughter is lying in there. I felt Curtis's hand tighten around mine. I kept my eyes closed, my body limp. I focused on the darkness behind my eyelids. We are just here to ensure her affairs are in order. A second voice cut in. Smooth, oily, male. My stomach turned. I knew that voice. Gavin Rourke. He was a low-rent attorney who specialized in estate planning for people who had more ambition than assets. He had helped Delaney sue a dry cleaner once over a ruined silk blouse. She has a sister, a third voice chimed in. Maris, my younger sister. Her voice was higher, shaky, lacking the steel of our mother's. I need to see her too. Room 4, Janelle's voice came from the hallway. Professional and cold. 5 minutes. That is all I can give you. The doctor is preparing for surgery. Surgery. Delaney's voice hitched, but not with fear. It sounded like calculation. Is she conscious? Is she lucid? She is heavily sedated. Janelle lied smoothly. She is unresponsive. Perfect, Delaney muttered. It was quiet. Meant only for her entourage, but in the heightened state of my adrenaline, it sounded like a gunshot. The curtain was ripped back. The air in the cubicle changed instantly. The antiseptic smell of the hospital was overpowered by a wave of heavy floral perfume. "Oh, look at her," Delaney said. There was no tears in her voice. It was a performance review. "She looks terrible." I lay motionless. I felt them crowd into the small space. 3 of them, plus Curtis, plus Janelle. The room felt suffocating. "Mom, is she—" Maris started, her voice trembling. "She is out cold," Delaney said dismissively. She moved to the side of the bed. I felt her hand touch my arm. It was not a caress. It was a prod. She was checking the merchandise. "Can she hear us?" "Unlikely," Janelle said from the corner. "Her vitals are stable, but the pain management protocol is aggressive." "Good," Delaney said briskly. "Gavin, get the papers out. We do not have much time before she goes into surgery. If something happens on the table well, we need to be prepared." "Curtis," Gavin Rourke said. I heard the rustle of a briefcase opening. "I am so sorry for this tragic situation, truly, but we need to be practical. Orissa is incapacitated. Decisions need to be made, financial decisions, medical decisions." "I can make decisions," Curtis stammered. "I am her husband." "Technically, yes," Rourke said, his voice dripping with condescension. "But do you really want that burden? Look at you. Son, you are in shock. You are not thinking clearly. Delaney here, she is the matriarch. She knows what Orissa would want. She has handled the family finances for decades." The lie was so bold I almost gasped. Delaney had not handled finances. She had cannibalized them. "We have prepared a document," Rourke continued, the sound of paper sliding across a plastic tray table. "It is a standard emergency medical and financial authorization. It essentially grants Delaney temporary conservatorship while Orissa is unable to advocate for herself. It allows us to access her accounts to pay for specialized treatments, better surgeons, private rooms, and to ensure her assets are protected," Delaney added. "You know how banks are, Curtis. They freeze everything when they hear coma. We need to keep the liquidity flowing for her sake." "I brought a notary," Rourke said. "He is waiting in the hall. We just need to get the biometrics, since she cannot sign. A fingerprint or a retinal scan authorized in the presence of a notary and legal counsel is admissible under the emergency statutes." I lay there, my heart hammering against my bruised ribs. This was not a visit. This was a raid. They had brought a notary. They had brought a lawyer. They had printed out paperwork before they even knew if I was alive. They were not here to say goodbye. They were here to strip mine me before I expired. "I do not know," Curtis said, his voice wavering. "Orissa told me." "Orissa is not here right now. Curtis," Delaney snapped, her mask slipping. "Look at her. She is a vegetable. Do you want her to die because you were too stubborn to let her mother help? Do you want that on your conscience?" "Mom, stop," Maris whispered. "You are scaring him." "Shut up, Maris," Delaney hissed. "Gavin, get the tablet. We need the Face ID to unlock the initial banking authorization. Then we use the fingerprint for the document." "Wait," Curtis said. "You want to unlock her phone?" "We need to transfer the funds for the specialist," Delaney lied. "Now move out of the way. Curtis." I felt the air shift as Delaney leaned over me. I could smell the stale coffee on her breath beneath the perfume. I felt the heat of a tablet screen being brought close to my face. They were going to use my unconscious face to unlock my life. They were going to use my limp hand to sign away my freedom. "Hold her eyelids open," Rourke instructed calmly, as if he were asking someone to hold a door. "The sensor needs to see the pupils." "Curtis, grab her other hand," Delaney commanded. "No," Curtis said. It was soft, but it was there. "What did you say to me?" Delaney's voice dropped to a growl. "I said no," Curtis said, louder this time. "Do not touch her eyes." "You useless little—" "Gavin, do it," Delaney ordered. "I will hold her eyes." I felt cold. Manicured fingers pinched the skin of my brow and cheek. She was going to pry my eyes open. She was going to violate the sanctity of my own body to get to a routing number. I waited until the pressure of her fingers was firm. I waited until I felt the glass of the tablet screen hovering inches from my nose. Then, I stopped pretending. The air in the trauma bay felt suddenly thin, sucked dry by the 3 predators standing over my bed. Through the slit of my eyelids, I saw the blurred outline of my mother, Delaney Oakmere, moving with the efficient, predatory grace of a shark that smells blood in the water. She was not looking at my face. She was looking at my hands. "She is under," Delaney snapped, her voice devoid of any maternal warmth. It was the tone she used when sending back a steak that was cooked medium instead of medium rare. "Do it. Do it fast before the nurse comes back." I realized then that they had managed to push Curtis out. I could hear him from beyond the curtain and the muted chaos of the hallway. A muffled, frantic shouting. Rourke, the lawyer, must have pulled some legal sleight of hand, citing spousal hysteria or a need for a sterile environment for the notary to get my husband ejected into the corridor. The irony burned. They had removed the only person who loved me to protect the people who were robbing me. "She looks terrible," a voice muttered from the foot of the bed. It was Maris. My younger sister sounded bored, scrolling through her phone, likely checking her engagement on Instagram. "Look at that bruising. Gross. But at least she still has the finger. That is all we need. Right?" "Focus. Maris," Delaney hissed. "I am just saying," Maris replied, a distinct snap of gum popping in her mouth. If she lost the hand, this would be a lot harder. "The biometric authentication is the priority." Gavin Rourke's voice was low, smooth, and sickeningly professional. He moved closer, his cologne something musky and expensive clashing with the antiseptic smell of the room. "We need to override the revocation she initiated. The bank's security protocol requires a fingerprint or facial recognition to restore the linked overdraft protection and to authorize the transfer of power of attorney due to incapacitation." "I know how it works, Gavin," Delaney said impatiently. "Just get the tablet ready." I felt a cold hand wrap around my left wrist. It was Delaney. Her grip was tight, possessive, the nails digging into my skin. She lifted my limp hand from the sheets. I forced my muscles to remain slack. Dead weight, even as every instinct in my body screamed at me to make a fist and strike her. "Hand me the wipes," Delaney commanded. I heard the crinkle of a foil packet being torn open. The smell of alcohol and lemon wafted over me. Then, the wet, cold sensation of a sanitizing wipe scrubbing my index finger. She was cleaning me, not to prevent infection, not to care for my wounds. She was cleaning the grease and blood off my fingertip so the scanner would get a clean read. I was not a daughter in that moment. I was a key. I was a password. Outside, the banging on the door grew louder. "Orissa, open the door. Let me in." Curtis was screaming. His voice broke on my name. "That is my wife. Get away from her." "Can someone shut him up?" Delaney growled, not even looking at the door. "He is going to attract attention." "Security is handling him," Rourke assured her. "I told them he was agitating the patient and interfering with an emergency medical directive. They will hold him back." "Good," Delaney said. She lifted my hand higher. "Okay, bring the screen down. Flat. I need a solid press." I felt the heat of the tablet descending toward my face. I felt Delaney's other hand pressing down on my shoulder to hold me steady. Right on top of the deep bruising from the seatbelt. The pain was a sharp, white-hot bolt of lightning, but the rage was hotter. "Steady," Rourke whispered. "Right there." The glass of the screen brushed the tip of my finger. That was it. The line in the sand. My eyes snapped open. I did not blink. I stared directly up into the startled, perfectly made-up face of my mother. For a microsecond, there was silence. Absolute, terrified silence. Then, I moved. I jerked my hand back with a violence that sent the tablet spinning out of Rourke's grip. It clattered to the linoleum floor with a heavy thud. With my other hand, I ripped the oxygen mask off my face and tossed it aside. "Get your hands off me," I said. My voice was not a whisper. It was not weak. It was low, guttural, and vibrating with a fury that felt ancient. Delaney stumbled back, her heels clacking on the floor as she collided with the bedside table. Her face went from predatory focus to theatrical shock in a heartbeat. She clutched her chest, her eyes going wide. "Oh my God," she gasped, looking around the room as if checking for an audience. "Orissa, you are hallucinating. You are in shock." "I am not hallucinating," I said, pushing myself up to a sitting position. The pain in my ribs was agonizing, like jagged glass grinding together. But I used it. I let the pain sharpen my focus. "And I am not in shock. Mother, I am in clarity." "Honey, lay back down," Delaney said, her voice shifting instantly to a saccharine, patronizing COO. She took a step forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. "The medication is making you paranoid. We are just here to help. You are having a seizure. We were trying to stabilize you." "Stop lying," I cut her off. The words were like a slap. I heard every word. I felt you wipe my finger. I heard you tell Maris to shut up. I heard you tell the lawyer to override the revocation. Rourke stepped forward, adjusting his tie, trying to salvage the situation with legal posturing. "Mrs. Whitmere, please, you have suffered a severe head trauma. Your mother was simply acting in your best interest to ensure your assets were not frozen during your recovery. We are protecting the family estate." I turned my gaze to him. Rourke actually flinched. "What family estate?" "Gavin," I asked. "The one she drank away, the one she wore on her wrist to the club last week, or the one she tried to siphon from my checking account while I was bleeding in an ambulance?" "Orissa," Delaney shrieked, dropping the act. "How dare you speak to me like that? I gave birth to you. I have been standing here terrified that you were going to die. And this is how you treat me." "Terrified." I laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "You were not terrified. You were inconvenienced." I pointed a shaking finger at her. "I saw the texts. Delaney. Card declined. Fix it now. I am 5 minutes away. Not one question about my ribs. Not one question about Luma. You did not come here to see if I survived. You came here because the ATM stopped dispensing cash." "I was frantic," Delaney yelled, her face flushing a blotchy red. "I was trying to book a flight to come see you. That is why I needed the money to get to you." "Liar," I said. "You were at the airport lounge going to Cabo. I saw the charge attempt on the notification before I blocked you. You were trying to buy a first-class upgrade, not a ticket to my bedside." The room fell silent. Delaney's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. She had been caught in the specific, undeniable details of her own greed. "And you," I said, turning to Maris. My sister was pressed against the wall, looking like a deer in headlights, her phone clutching in her hand. "At least she still has the finger. Is that what I am to you, a biometric key?" "I didn't mean it like that. Rissa," Maris stammered, her eyes darting between me and Delaney. "Mom said you were confusing things. She said you messed up the banking app by mistake, and we needed to fix it so we could pay for your surgery." "My surgery is covered by my insurance," I said. "The insurance I pay for. The insurance Mom tried to make me upgrade so she could use the dermatology perks." "We are leaving," Rourke announced abruptly. He bent down to pick up his tablet, checking the screen for cracks. "Mrs. Oakmere, I think it is best if we let your daughter rest. She is clearly not in a state to sign documents." "She is not signing anything," Delaney exploded. She turned on me, her eyes venomous. "You ungrateful little brat. After everything I have done for you, I raised you alone. I sacrificed my career. And you cut me off. You humiliate me at the counter. Do you know who I am?" "I know exactly who you are," I said calmly. "You are an authorized user who just got revoked." "You cannot do this to me," Delaney seethed, stepping closer, her finger pointing at my face. "I have expenses. I have commitments. If that money doesn't transfer by 5 o'clock, checks are going to bounce. Do you hear me? Bouncing checks, Orissa. It will ruin our credit." "Your credit," I corrected. "My credit is fine, or it will be. Now that you are gone, We need that money. Rissa, Maris blurted out. She stepped away from the wall, desperation cracking her voice. You don't understand. If we don't get the transfer, the hold on the house in Clearwater falls through. The room seemed to freeze. I looked at Maris. Then I looked at Delaney. Clearwater, I asked softly. Delaney shot Maris a look that could have killed a lesser mammal. Shut up, you idiot. What house in Clearwater? I asked, the pieces clicking together in my mind like the tumblers of a safe. You told me you were renting a condo in the city. You said you were broke. You said you needed money for groceries. Maris started crying. Mom put a deposit down on a beach house, a foreclosure flip. She said if we got the money from your account today, we could close on it next week and flip it for double by summer. She promised me my share would pay off my student loans. I stared at them. My ribs throbbed, but I hardly felt it. The scale of the betrayal was breathtaking. You spent money you didn't have, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. You put a deposit down on a second home using my overdraft protection as your collateral. You were going to use my savings, my daughter's future, to gamble on real estate. It was an investment, Delaney shouted, defensive now. I was doing it for us, for the family. We were going to pay you back with interest. Why are you so selfish? Selfish. I repeated the word. It tasted metallic. I am lying in a trauma bay with broken bones, and you are angry because you lost your gamble. We can still fix this, Rourke interjected, holding up his hands. Orissa, be reasonable. If the deposit is lost, your mother loses $20,000. That is a significant loss. If you just authorize a temporary bridge loan— Get out, I said. Orissa, please, Delaney whined, switching tactics again, trying for pity. They will sue me. I signed a contract. Get out, I screamed. The force of the yell tore something inside my chest, a fresh wave of agony that nearly doubled me over, but I pointed at the door. Get out before I call the police and have you arrested for attempted fraud and assault. You wouldn't dare, Delaney sneered. I am your mother. Watch me, I hissed. Janelle. The curtain whipped back. Janelle was there. And behind her, looming like a thunderhead, was the head of hospital security. And behind him, pushing past the blockage, was Curtis. Remove them, Janelle said, her voice like steel. Now? This is ridiculous, Delaney scoffed, adjusting her blazer. We are leaving. Come on, Maris. Your sister is clearly mentally unstable. We will come back when the drugs wear off, and she remembers who pays the bills. Oh, wait. She doesn't know anything about bills, does she? She just hoards money while her family suffers. She turned on her heel and marched out. Head high, as if she were leaving a boring party, Rourke scrambled after her, clutching his briefcase. Maris lingered for a second, looking at me with tear-filled eyes. I really wanted to pay off my loans. Rissa, I didn't think it would hurt you. Go, I said. Maris turned and ran. Curtis rushed into the room, collapsing by the side of the bed, burying his face in the sheets near my hand. I am so sorry, he sobbed. I tried to stop them. I am so sorry. I stroked his hair with my trembling hand. The adrenaline was crashing now. The pain was returning, 10 times heavier than before, but the room was clear. The parasites were gone. It is okay, I whispered, leaning back against the pillows, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. They are gone. But Curtis? He looked up, his eyes red and swollen. They are not done, I said. They are desperate, and desperate people do not just walk away. I looked at the empty doorway where my mother had stood. I knew her. This was not a retreat. It was a regrouping. Call Elias, I told him, my eyes closing as exhaustion took over. Tell him the sharks are circling, and tell him I am ready to burn the ocean. The curtain was still fluttering from Janelle's command to remove them, but Delaney Oakmere does not leave a room until she has scorched the earth. She stood her ground near the foot of my bed, her chest heaving, pointing a manicured finger at the nurse. You are making a mistake, Delaney spat, her voice climbing an octave. I am her next of kin. I have rights. If you touch me, I will have this hospital sued into the ground. I demand to speak to the administrator. I demand. The heavy wooden door to the trauma unit swung open. It did not just open, it was pushed with a deliberate, heavy force that sucked the air out of the room. Silence fell instantly. Even the ambient noise of the ER seemed to dampen. Framed in the doorway stood a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and dressed in a three-piece suit. He was 82 years old, but he stood with the posture of a general reviewing troops before a battle. He leaned on a cane, not for support, but as an accessory of authority. Elias Oakmere, my grandfather. He was not alone. Flanking him were two broad-shouldered hospital security officers and a woman in a sharp navy blazer wearing the ID badge of the chief hospital administrator. Elias did not look at me. He did not look at Curtis. He walked straight into the center of the room, the thud click of his cane on the linoleum marking time like a gavel. He stopped 3 feet from Delaney. He did not scream. He did not raise a hand. He simply existed in her space, consuming the oxygen she had been hoarding. You called for an administrator, Elias said. His voice was a low rumble, gravel grinding against steel. Here she is. Delaney blinked, her mouth opening and closing. Daddy, why are you here? Elias ignored her. He turned to the woman in the navy blazer. Ms. Vance, if you would be so kind. Ms. Vance stepped forward, holding a thick manila envelope. She did not look at Delaney. She looked at Gavin Rourke. The lawyer stiffened, his instincts telling him that the predator had just become the prey. Mr. Rourke, Miss Vance said, her tone professional and icy. We have reviewed the patient's file. It appears there was a misunderstanding regarding the chain of command for medical and financial decisions. Rourke straightened his tie, trying to regain his footing. Misunderstanding, I think not. Mrs. Oakmere is the mother. In the absence of a prior directive, the hierarchy is clear. We were simply expediting. There is no absence of a directive, Elias interrupted. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a document. It was old. The paper was slightly yellowed at the edges, enclosed in a crisp plastic sleeve. He slapped it onto the rolling tray table with a sound like a gunshot. Medical directive and durable power of attorney, Elias announced. Signed, notarized, and filed with the county clerk 4 years ago. The day Orissa found out she was pregnant, she knew even then. Delaney, she knew you would come for the scraps. I watched from the bed, my vision blurring slightly from the pain but my mind razor sharp. I remembered that day. I had gone to Elias secretly. I had told him I was afraid that if something happened to me during childbirth, Delaney would take Luma. I had signed everything over to him. I had forgotten the power of that paperwork until this moment. Ms. Vance opened the folder. It is ironclad. In the event of Mrs. Whitmere's incapacitation or inability to advocate, all decision-making power regarding her health and her assets bypasses the spouse if he is under duress, and explicitly bypasses the parents. The sole designated proxy is Elias Oakmere. Rourke's face drained of color. He looked at the tablet on the floor, the one he had tried to force my fingerprint onto. He looked at me, awake and glaring. Then he looked at Elias. You attempted to coerce a patient into signing a legal document while she was under the influence of narcotics. Ms. Vance continued. Knowing that a superior legal directive existed, in this state, that is not just malpractice, Mr. Rourke. It is attempted fraud, and it is a felony. Rourke took a step back, his hands raised in surrender. I was not informed. My client told me there were no other documents. I was acting on the information provided. You liar, Delaney shrieked, turning on the lawyer. You said we could override it. You said being the mother trumped everything. Silence, Elias said. It was not a shout. It was a command. Delaney shut her mouth, the cords in her neck standing out. Elias turned his head slowly to look at his daughter. The look in his eyes was not hate. Hate implies passion. This was indifference. It was the look a gardener gives a weed before pulling it out by the root. "You did not come here to see if your daughter was alive," Elias said. "You came here to rob the body." "That is not true," Delaney cried, the tears starting now, the weaponized tears she had used since I was a child. "I love her. I am her mother. I birthed her. I sacrificed my life for her. How can you stand there and accuse me of theft when I'm suffering?" She turned to Curtis, reaching out a hand. "Curtis, tell him how worried I was." Curtis stood up. He walked over to stand next to Elias. He did not take her hand. He crossed his arms. "You were worried about the transfer. Delaney, you told me to make her pay or you would ruin us." "I was stressed," Delaney sobbed, pivoting back to Elias. "I raised her alone. Dad, she owes me. Do you know how much it costs to raise a child? The lessons, the clothes I gave her, everything. Is it a crime to expect a little help when I'm drowning? It is a debt of honor. It is the cost of birth." Elias leaned forward, his face inches from hers. "The cost of birth," Elias repeated, tasting the words. "Let me be very clear with you. Delaney, providing life does not make you a creditor, and being born does not make her your debtor. The act of giving birth does not come with an interest rate." "You turned her against me," Delaney spat. "You always hated that she loved me more." "She did not love you," Elias said simply. "She survived you." Rourke was edging toward the door. "I think my presence here is no longer constructive. I will be taking my leave." "Stay where you are," Elias said without looking at him. "Security, block the door." The two guards stepped in front of the exit, crossing their arms. Rourke froze. "I have one more thing," Elias said. He reached into his other pocket and pulled out his smartphone. He was slow with technology, his fingers thick and clumsy, but he knew exactly what he was looking for. "Orissa sent me a text, but before that, she sent me a forward. From Curtis." He tapped the screen. "This is a voicemail," Elias explained to the room. "From 3 months ago. You left it on Curtis's work phone when you thought he wouldn't check it. You were drunk. Delaney, you always tell the truth when you have had a bottle of Chardonnay." He pressed play. The volume was turned up to the maximum. Delaney's voice, slurred and nasty, filled the sterile hospital room. "Curtis, pick up the phone. I need that loan co-signed. Look, if you are worried about Orissa finding out, don't be, ideally. The stress will kill her one of these days. God knows she is high-strung enough. If she drops dead, it actually makes the paperwork easier for us. The insurance payout covers everything, and you won't have to listen to her nagging anymore. Just sign the damn paper." The recording clicked off. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bones. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I had never heard that voicemail. Curtis had protected me from it. Hearing it now, hearing my mother casually discuss my death as a logistical convenience, felt like the final rib snapping. But it didn't hurt. It cauterized the wound. Delaney stood in the center of the room, her face pale, stripped of all her masks. There was no doting mother left. There was no victim. There was just a greedy, small woman who had bet against her own daughter's life and lost. She spun around to Maris. "Maris, say something. Tell them I didn't mean it. It was a joke I was venting." Maris looked at Delaney. Then she looked at the security guards. Then she looked at me. For the first time in her life, my sister did the math and realized she was on the wrong side of the equation. "You said," Maris's voice trembled, "you said if we came here today, Rissa would sign the checks and we would be safe. You didn't tell me you hoped she would die." "I didn't. You stupid girl." "Back me up," Delaney screamed, grabbing Maris's arm. Maris yanked her arm away. "Don't touch me. That is enough, Ms., Vance said sharply. "Security, escort Mrs. Oakmere and Mr. Rourke off the premises. If they return, call the police and file for criminal trespassing." The guards moved in. One of them took Delaney by the elbow. It wasn't gentle. "No," Delaney shrieked, thrashing against the grip. "You cannot do this. I am her mother. She is my property. I made her." No, Elias said. He lifted his cane and pointed it at her chest. She is a human being. You are just a revoked authorized user. I have rights, Delaney yelled as she was dragged toward the door. Rourke was hurrying ahead of her, trying to distance himself from the radioactive fallout of his client. Suddenly, Delaney stopped fighting. She dug her heels into the linoleum. A frantic, desperate light came into her eyes. She reached into her purse with her free hand. Wait, she panted. Mr. Rourke Gavin, do not leave. I can pay you. I can pay the retainer right now. We can fight this. I have the card. I have the platinum card. She pulled out the black card, the one linked to my account. The one she had brandished at country clubs and boutiques for years. I will swipe it right now, she yelled, waving the plastic rectangle in the air like a talisman. $5,000, $10,000. Just get them to stop. Rourke paused at the door. Greed is a powerful reflex. He looked at the card. He looked at the card reader sitting on the nurse's station counter just outside the door. If the payment clears, Rourke hesitated, his eyes narrowing. I cleared my throat. It hurt, but the sound cut through the noise. Try it, I whispered. Delaney's head snapped toward me. Go ahead, I said, my voice gaining strength. Run it! Delaney broke free from the guard's loosened grip and lunged for the portable card reader on the counter near the sink. She jammed the card into the slot. Her fingers punched in the code with frantic, muscle memory speed. We all watched the tiny screen. Processing Delaney stared at it, murmuring a prayer to the god of materialism. Come on. It is a $20,000 limit. Come on. Beep. A harsh, dissonant tone echoed in the room. The screen flashed red text. Large and unforgiving. Transaction declined. Do not honor. Delaney stared at the machine. She swiped it again. Beep. Declined. She swiped it a third time. Harder. Scratching the magnetic strip. Beep. Declined. It is broken, she screamed, slamming the machine against the counter. This machine is broken. Run it again. The machine works fine, I said. The bank works fine. The only thing broken, Mother, is your access. Elias stepped forward, his shadow falling over her. It is over. Delaney, you are done. She looked at the card in her hand. Then she looked at me. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The money was gone. The power was gone. The leverage was gone. You, she whispered, her voice shaking with pure distilled venom. You ungrateful bitch. I hope you rot. Get her out, Elias commanded. The guards grabbed her again. This time with zero hesitation. They dragged her backward through the door. She didn't scream anymore. She just stared at me, her eyes wide and hollow, holding the useless plastic card until it slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. Rourke had already vanished, sprinting down the hallway to save his license. Maris stood by the door, looking at the fallen credit card, then at me. She didn't say a word. She just turned and walked away, not following our mother, but disappearing into the anonymity of the hospital corridor. The door swung shut. The silence that returned to the room was different this time. It wasn't heavy. It was clean. Elias stood there for a moment, leaning on his cane. His shoulders, which had been squared for battle, finally slumped just a fraction. He looked at the administrator. Thank you. Ms. Vance, I trust you can handle the paperwork from here. Consider it done. Mr. Oakmere, she said, nodding respectfully before stepping out to give us privacy. Elias turned to Curtis. You did good, son. You held the line. Curtis let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. He sank onto the edge of the bed, putting his head in his hands. Then, finally, Elias looked at me. He walked over to the side of the bed. He reached out a hand, one that was weathered and spotted with age, but warm, and placed it gently on my forehead, brushing back a stray lock of hair that was stuck to my skin with sweat. I am sorry I didn't get here sooner, he said softly. You were right on time, I whispered. Tears were finally leaking from my eyes, but they weren't from pain. They were from relief. She is gone, Rissa, Elias said. She cannot hurt you anymore. I placed the fraud alert myself this morning when you texted. But the revoking. That was all you. I looked at the door. I knew this wasn't the end of the war. Delaney would not go quietly into poverty. She would fight. She would slander. She would claw at the walls. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the noise she would make. I had the one thing she never thought I would find. I had the receipts. The adrenaline crash was physical, a sudden gravity that pulled my bones into the mattress. But my mind refused to shut down. The analyst in me, the part that hunted discrepancies for Redwood Integrity Solutions, woke up. Emotions were messy variables. I needed constants. I needed data. "Janelle," I said, my voice barely a croak. The nurse was checking my IV. "I need the incident report. Now." "Honey, you need to sleep," Janelle soothed. "No," I insisted, pushing myself up despite the scream of protest from my ribs. "I need the security log. I need the names of everyone who entered this room. I need a copy of the hallway camera footage from what time is it?" "It is 7:45, Curtis said, looking at his watch. "From 6:30 to 7:30, I instructed. "I want it time-stamped. I want it on a drive. And I want a formal statement from hospital security regarding the attempted forced signature." Elias, who had settled into the armchair in the corner like a stone sentinel, nodded slowly. He tapped his cane on the floor. "Smart girl. Do not win with words. Orissa, words evaporate. Win with paper. Paper is heavy. Paper crushes people." "That is exactly what I'm going to do," I said. While Curtis went to coordinate with the hospital administrator for the footage, I asked for my laptop. Janelle hesitated, but saw the look in my eye, the same look I gave when I found $1 million variance in a corporate audit. She handed me my bag. I opened the laptop. The screen glowed. A blue square of logic in a room full of pain. I didn't go to social media. I didn't check my email. I went straight to the raw data. I pulled up the last 9 years of bank statements. Usually, I looked at them with a filter of guilt, rationalizing every expense as helping family. Today, I looked at them as a forensic accountant. I created a new spreadsheet. I named it simply Case File D. Oakmere. I started categorizing. The columns filled up fast. Column A, overdraft coverages. Column B, emergency transfers. Column C, third-party wallet apps. I drilled down into the digital wallet transactions. Delaney was clever, but she was lazy. She used the same recurring patterns. Small test transactions of $5 or $10 to see if the account was active, followed immediately by a large withdrawal of $300 or $400. It was the classic signature of a parasite testing the host. "Curtis," I called out as he walked back in, "I need your phone." "Why?" he asked, handing it over. "I need the communication log. Every text. Every voicemail. Every email she sent you. Rissa, some of them are nasty," he warned. "I know," I said. "That is the point." I plugged his phone into my laptop and ran a text export script. The messages scrolled by. I filtered for keywords: money, loan, debt, bank, sign. I found a thread from 2 years ago, Delaney to Curtis. "You know, Curtis, jobs in landscape architecture are so fragile. I play bridge with the wife of the city planner. It would be a shame if your firm lost that park contract because someone heard you were financially unstable. Just get Orissa to release the funds." I felt a cold rage settle in my gut. She hadn't just leeched off me. She had held a knife to my husband's career. I saved the thread as Exhibit D extortion/coercion. But the real twist came when I cross-referenced my credit report. I had always monitored my main score, which was excellent. But I hadn't looked at the soft inquiries, the checks that don't impact your score, but show who is looking at you. There was a recurring inquiry from a company called Oakmere Consulting LLC. I ran a business entity search. The LLC was registered 3 years ago, the registered agent, APO, box in Nevada. But the authorized signer for the initial credit line, Orissa Oakmere. I stared at the screen. I had never signed this. I dug deeper. This LLC had a business credit card with a $25,000 limit. It was maxed out. The payments were being made barely from a secondary account I didn't recognize. She didn't just spend my money, I whispered, the realization making my skin crawl. She became me. She had used my social security number to open a business line of credit under a shell company, likely using the authorized user status on my personal account as a verification anchor. She was building a debt bomb in my name, ticking away in a file I didn't know existed. My phone buzzed. A text message. Maris. Hey Rissa, are you okay? Mom is freaking out in the car. She is saying you are going to jail for elder abuse. I just wanted to say, I didn't know about the die comment. I swear. I looked at the message. A normal sister would reply with anger. A normal sister would block the number. I was not a normal sister anymore. I was an investigator, and Maris was a leak. I typed back, keeping my tone neutral. I am tired. Maris, why is she so desperate? The account usually has a buffer. Why did she need $20,000 today? The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Maris was weighing her loyalty against her fear. Fear won. Maris. It is bad. There are these guys, private lenders, not banks. Mom borrowed from them to cover the deposit on the Clearwater house, thinking she could flip it before the first payment was due. But the contractor ran off with the renovation money. The lenders want their cash by Monday. She told them she had a silent partner, who would sign off on everything today. I took a screenshot. Exhibit E admission of predatory lending/fraud scheme. She is cornered, I said to Elias. She borrowed from loan sharks. That is why she came with a notary. She needed to liquidate me to save her kneecaps. Elias nodded, his expression grim. I suspected as much. That is why I made a move of my own last year. What move? I asked. The fraud alert? Elias said. You think you revoked her access today? I placed a legal guardianship watch note on your file 12 months ago. It is an internal banking flag. It doesn't stop transactions, but it logs every single attempt by a secondary user to access the primary dashboard. I knew she would try to take over the account eventually. I just needed the log to prove intent. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was a letter from the bank's fraud unit, dated last year. Subject monitoring enabled for D. Oakmere. You let her incriminate herself, I said, studying him with fresh respect. I just gave her room, Elias corrected. She did the rest. I pulled everything together, the security footage of her trying to force my fingerprint, the audio of her vicious little wish, Maris's text admitting the debt scam, the LLC filing, the bank access logs. Then I wrote 3 emails. The first went to my bank's fraud department, with the police report number I was about to file attached. Subject identity theft/unauthorized credit line. The second went to the Northbridge Police Department, submitting an online report for financial elder abuse. Ironic, considering she was the elder though the statute covered dependent adults. And she'd tried to have me declared incapacitated and attempted grand larceny. If you paste the rest of the paragraphs, especially the third email bit, I'll rewrite that section to match this exact cadence too. The third was to the hospital's legal team, formally requesting a restraining order based on the security incident. I hit send all. The digital paper trail was launched. It was invisible, but it was heavier than the SUV that had hit me. It would land on her life with the force of a wrecking ball. It is done, I said, closing the laptop. My chest ached, my head throbbed, but for the first time in hours, I felt clean. Can I see her? I asked Curtis. He knew who I meant. He pulled out his phone and opened the nursery cam app connected to our house. There she was, Luma, sleeping in her crib, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She looked so peaceful, so safe. She had no idea that hours ago, her grandmother had tried to sell her future to pay a gambling debt. I touched the screen, tracing the outline of my daughter's face. She will never know this feeling, I whispered. She will never know what it is like to be an investment vehicle. I looked up at Curtis, then at Elias. Mom will not turn her into a wallet, I said, my voice hard as diamonds, and neither will Grandma. The line ends here. I lay back, the exhaustion finally winning. The war was far from over. Delaney would scream. She would sue. She would play the victim on every social media platform that would have her. But I had the one thing she feared more than poverty. I had the truth, organized in columns and rows, backed up on a secure server, and I was ready to read it into the record. The hospital room had finally settled into a quiet that felt less like peace and more like the breathless vacuum after an explosion. Elias had stepped out to speak with the hospital's legal counsel regarding the restraining order, leaving Curtis and me alone in the dim light. My husband sat in the plastic chair, his head bowed, his hands clasped so tightly between his knees that his knuckles were white. "Curtis," I said. My voice was raspy, the adrenaline that had fueled my confrontation with Delaney fading into a deep, bone-weary ache. "Look at me." He lifted his head. His eyes were red-rimmed, filled with a mixture of relief and a specific, heavy kind of guilt that I recognized instantly. It was the look of a man carrying a stone he had been afraid to put down. "There is something else," he said. It wasn't a question. "Tell me," I replied. I didn't brace myself. After the last 2 hours, I felt immune to shock. I was simply gathering data. "About 3 months ago," Curtis started, his voice cracking slightly. "Right after you got that promotion at Redwood, your mom called me. She asked to meet for coffee. She made a big deal about it being a surprise for you. Said she wanted to plan a celebration dinner." I stared at him. Delaney hated coffee shops. She found them pedestrian. If she met him, she wanted something. "I met her at that bistro on 4th Street, Curtis continued. "She didn't order coffee. She ordered champagne, and then she slid a folder across the table. It wasn't a party plan. Rissa, it was a loan application." I felt a cold prickle of recognition. "For what?" "She called it a bridge sponsorship," Curtis said, shaking his head at his own naivety. "She said her liquidity was tied up in an offshore investment that was about to mature. She wanted me to co-sign a personal loan for $50,000. She said if I did it, she would pay it back in 6 weeks with 10% interest, and we could use the profit to take you to Italy." I closed my eyes. The manipulation was elegant in its cruelty. She knew Curtis had always wanted to take me to Europe. She wasn't just asking for money. She was weaponizing his love for me to get it. "I said no," Curtis said quickly, leaning forward. "I swear. Rissa, I told her I couldn't sign anything without talking to you. I told her our finances were joint. But what? But she started crying," he whispered. "She grabbed my hand. She told me not to tell you. She said you were under so much pressure at work, that you were on the verge of a breakdown. She said if you knew she was having money trouble, it would push you over the edge. She made me promise to protect you by keeping it a secret." He looked at me, pleading for understanding. "I thought I was helping. I thought I was shielding you from her mess. I didn't want to add to your stress. A normal wife might have been furious. A normal wife might have screamed about secrets and trust. But I wasn't feeling like a wife in that moment. I was an analyst. I was looking at a pattern of behavior." "Did she leave the paperwork with you?" I asked. Curtis blinked, surprised by my tone. "What?" "The loan application," I said, my voice steady. "Did you keep it?" "No," he said. "She snatched it back the second I said I wouldn't sign. She got angry fast. She called me a useless barrier." "Okay," I said, processing. "What date was this exactly?" "It was a Tuesday," Curtis recalled, frowning in concentration. "November 14th. I remember because I had a site visit afterward." "November 14th," I repeated. "That was the day after I added the extra accidental death coverage to my life insurance policy." The silence in the room thickened. Curtis looked at me, confusion clouding his face. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Curtis," I said, pushing myself up on the pillows, ignoring the protest of my fractured ribs. "Think, did she ever ask you about my insurance?" Curtis went pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, and then looked at the floor. "Curtis." "A week later," he whispered. I got a call at my office. It wasn't Delaney. It was a woman who said she was from the HR department at Redwood. She said they were updating your beneficiary files and needed to confirm the policy details because the system was down. I thought it was weird that they called me, but she had your employee ID number. She knew your start date. And I pushed, and I told her the beneficiary was me and Luma, Curtis said. And she asked if the policy paid out in the event of medical incapacitation or just death. She asked about the double indemnity clause for vehicular accidents. My blood ran cold. It wasn't fear. It was the chill of absolute clarity. That wasn't HR, I said softly. That was Delaney, or Maris acting on her orders. How do you know? Because Redwood HR never calls spouses for data verification, I said. They email me directly through the secure portal and my employee ID number. It is on the pay stubs Delaney used to see when she helped me organize my tax documents 2 years ago. Curtis looked like he was going to be sick. She was checking the payout. She was checking to see how much you were worth if I died in a car accident. I finished the sentence for him. We sat there for a long moment, the horror of it settling between us. It wasn't that she had cut my brake lines. I didn't believe she was a murderer. Not directly. She was too cowardly for that, but she was an opportunist. She knew I drove a dangerous commute. She knew I was stressed. She had bet on the odds. She had prepared for the crash not with fear, but with a calculator. I am so sorry, Curtis choked out, burying his face in his hands. I should have told you. I let her get close. I let her fish for information. I am so stupid. Stop, I said. I reached out and took his hand. You are not stupid. Curtis, you are decent. Predators rely on decency. They use our politeness against us. She knew you wouldn't be rude to your mother-in-law. She knew you wouldn't hang up on HR. I felt like I failed you, he said. You didn't fail me, I said firmly. You were just the door she tried to kick down. But you stood. You didn't sign the loan. You didn't give her the money today. That is what matters. I squeezed his hand. But now, the rules change. We are at war, Curtis, and in war, we do not have secrets. What do we do? He asked, wiping his eyes. We establish protocol, I said, my voice hardening into steel. Rule number 1, no verbal communication with Delaney or Maris. None. If they call, let it go to voicemail. If they show up at the house, do not open the door. Talk through the doorbell camera. Okay, he nodded. Recorded? Rule number 2, I continued. No emotional responses. If she texts you something hurtful and you do not defend yourself. You do not get angry. You screenshot it and you send it to me. We are building a file, not a relationship. Got it, he said. Rule number 3, I said, looking him dead in the eye. We protect Luma. Delaney is going to try to use her. She will try to pick her up from daycare. She will try to show up at the park. You need to tell the daycare director immediately that Delaney Oakmere is not on the pickup list and is strictly forbidden from contact. Give them a photo. I will do it right now, Curtis said, pulling out his phone. And Curtis? Yeah. Go home, I said gently. Go be with our daughter. She needs her dad. I am safe here. The guards are outside. Elias has the lawyers working. I need to know you are with Luma. He hesitated. I don't want to leave you. I am not alone, I said, tapping my head. I am working. Go home. Lock the doors. Make sure the cameras are on. He kissed my forehead. A lingering, desperate kiss. And then he left. I watched him go, feeling a pang of loneliness. But I pushed it aside. I had tasks to complete. I pressed the call button for the nurse. Janelle appeared. You need more pain meds, honey. No, I said. I need the doctor, the attending physician, right now. He is doing rounds. But I need 5 minutes, I said. It is a legal matter. When Dr. Evans arrived, looking tired and holding a tablet, I didn't waste time. Doctor, I need you to add a note to my chart, I said. I need a formal assessment of my mental capacity. He frowned. Excuse me. My mother tried to claim I was hallucinating earlier, I explained, keeping my voice calm and professional. She tried to claim I was incompetent to make financial decisions. I anticipate she will try to challenge my revocation of her access in court by claiming I was delirious from the trauma or the fentanyl. Doctor. Evans's expression shifted from fatigue to understanding. He nodded slowly. I need you to document that I am oriented to person, place, time, and situation, I said. I need you to note that I am asking clear, logical questions and that I am fully aware of the consequences of my medical and legal decisions. I can do that, Doctor, Evans said. I will conduct a mini mental status exam right now and log it with the timestamp. We will lock it in the chart. Thank you, I said. Make it bulletproof. After he left, I picked up my phone. It was time to face the public front. I opened social media. I didn't have to look far. Delaney had posted on Facebook 20 minutes ago. It was a photo of her and me from my wedding day, one of the few times we looked happy. Mostly because she was the center of attention. The caption read, "Please pray for my heart tonight. My daughter was in a terrible accident, and I rushed to the hospital to save her, only to be thrown out by security because of a misunderstanding caused by her medication. She is confused and in pain, and sadly, she is being manipulated by people who want to drive a wedge between a mother and her child. I just want to help her. I have sacrificed everything for this family, and to be treated like a criminal while my baby lies broken is a pain no mother should bear. Heartbroken pray for Orissa. Ungrateful world." The comments were already rolling in. Oh my God. Delaney, I am so sorry. Kids these days have no respect. Stay strong. Mama Bear. I felt a surge of bile in my throat. She was spinning the narrative. She was painting herself as the martyr and me as the confused, ungrateful victim of manipulation, a veiled dig at Curtis and Elias. I hovered my thumb over the comment button. I wanted to scream. I wanted to type, "You stole $60,000. You tried to force my fingerprint while I was bleeding, but I stopped. Rule number 2. No emotional responses. If I commented, I gave her engagement. I gave her a platform to argue. I gave her exactly what she wanted, a public fight where she could play the victim. Instead, I took a screenshot. I saved it to the folder, Exhibit F Public Defamation/Harassment. Then I went to her profile and clicked the 3 dots in the corner. Block. I did the same on Instagram and on Twitter. I cut off the feed. My phone chimed with a video call. It was Curtis. I answered. The screen filled with the soft, golden light of the nursery lamp. Luma was asleep in her crib, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. Curtis was whispering from the hallway. "She is out like a light," he said. "Everything is locked up tight." "Good," I whispered, tears finally pricking my eyes as I looked at my daughter. "She is beautiful." "She looks like you," Curtis said. "No," I said fiercely. "She looks like herself. She belongs to herself." I touched the screen again. Delaney posted. I told Curtis, "She is playing the victim card." "Do you want me to reply?" Curtis asked, his voice tightening. "No," I said. "Let her scream into the void. She lives for attention. Curtis, she feeds on reaction. If we argue, we feed her. If we ignore her, she starves." "It is hard to ignore lies," he said. "The truth is not on Facebook," I said. "The truth is in the police report I just filed. The truth is in the bank logs. We are going to starve her out, and when she is weak, we are going to bury her with paperwork." I looked at my daughter one last time before hanging up. "Sleep tight, baby girl," I whispered to the pixelated image. "Mommy is building a wall, and nobody, not even Grandma, is ever going to climb over it again." I ended the call and lay back in the darkness. My ribs burned, but my mind was cold. Delaney Oakmere thought she was fighting a daughter. She was wrong. She was fighting a case file, and the evidence was overwhelming. 3 days after the incident in the trauma bay, the battlefield shifted from the sterile tiles of the hospital to the sterile letterhead of legal correspondence. I was still admitted, waiting for the swelling in my spine to subside, but my laptop had become a command center. The first domino fell on a Tuesday morning. It started with a call from the fraud investigation unit of my bank. They did not call to ask if I authorized a charge. They called to inform me of a freeze. Mrs. Whitmere, the investigator, a man named Mr. Henderson, said in a voice as dry as dust, "We have completed a preliminary audit based on your report of unauthorized access. We have flagged a series of transactions going back 18 months that fit the pattern of structuring." Structuring. I knew the term. It was the act of breaking up large deposits or transfers into smaller amounts to avoid federal reporting triggers. Delaney had been moving money out of my overdraft and into her digital wallets in chunks of $9,000, just under the $10,000 reporting limit. "We have frozen the secondary users' associated accounts pending a federal review," Henderson continued. "This includes the external account ending in 4022. That was Delaney's primary checking account. She was now liquid poor. 2 hours later, my inbox pinged. It was not Delaney. It was Gavin Rourke. The subject line read, "Confidential Settlement Proposal, without prejudice." I opened it. The tone had shifted entirely from the arrogant bully in the hospital room to a desperate diplomat trying to stop a war. Rourke was proposing a quiet uncoupling of finances. Delaney would agree to sign a document acknowledging the debt was a gift in exchange for me dropping the fraud report and the police complaint. He called it a misunderstanding of familial resource sharing. I did not call him. I hit reply. "Mr. Rourke, I will not accept phone calls. I will not accept off-the-record meetings. Any further communication must be in writing. My answer to your proposal is no. I do not negotiate with theft." I sent it. Then came Maris. My sister had been silent for 48 hours. But when the bank froze Delaney's account, the shockwave hit Maris instantly. Her name was on some of those transfers. She was the one who had physically moved some of the cash into the crypto wallets Delaney used to hide assets. Maris did not call. She sent a voice memo. Terrified that typing would leave a paper trail, not realizing that a recording was even better evidence. "Rissa, you have to tell them I didn't know." Maris's voice shook, high and brittle. "Mom told me she had your permission. She said you wanted to move the money to crypto to hide it from Curtis because you guys were getting divorced. I just did what she said. I cannot go to jail. Rissa, I have a job interview next week." I listened to it twice. Maris was trying to pivot. She was trying to paint herself as the innocent pawn. But in her panic, she handed me the smoking gun. She admitted Delaney had constructed a lie about my marriage to facilitate the theft. I saved the audio file. Exhibit G accessory admission. I texted back, "If you want to help yourself, Maris, send me the ledger. I know Mom keeps a physical notebook of her investments. Send me photos of the pages." 10 minutes later, 12 photos appeared on my screen. They were messy, handwritten notes in Delaney's looping script. They detailed payments to the Shark, payments for Clearwater option, and payments labeled Rissa's rent. I forwarded the photos to my tax attorney. She called the stolen money rent, I explained to Elias when he visited that afternoon. She is going to claim she was charging me retroactively for raising me. She thinks that makes it income, not theft. Elias sat by the window, looking out at the parking lot. He looked tired, but his eyes were flinty. "If she claims it is income," Elias said slowly, "then she has a problem, because she has filed 0 tax returns on that income for 5 years. She claims poverty to keep her alimony from her second husband high. If she admits she took $200,000 from you as rent, she admits to tax evasion." "Exactly," and I said, "I am submitting the dossier to the IRS whistleblower program this afternoon." But Elias had his own card to play. He placed a heavy binder on my bed. "You asked about the apartment," Elias said. "The penthouse Delaney lives in, the one she tells everyone she bought with her modeling money in the 90s. "Yeah," I said. "She threatens to sell it every time she needs attention." She cannot sell it, Elias said, a dark smile touching his lips. She does not own it. The Oakmere Family Trust owns it. I let her live there rent-free as long as she abided by the trust's code of conduct. He flipped the binder open to a highlighted paragraph. Clause 4, occupancy, is contingent upon the beneficiary maintaining good legal standing and refraining from any acts of moral turpitude, fraud, or criminal activity that could tarnish the reputation of the trust. Fraud is a breach of lease, Elias said. I issued the eviction notice this morning. She has 30 days to vacate, and since her accounts are frozen, she cannot even rent a motel room. The counterstrike was immediate. Delaney did not go quietly. The next morning, a process server was stopped at the hospital security desk. The papers were delivered to my lawyer instead. Delaney was suing me. The filing was a masterpiece of fiction. She was suing for constructive trust, claiming that we had a verbal contract where she managed my finances in exchange for a percentage, and that I had misappropriated her labor. She added a count for intentional infliction of emotional distress, citing the scene in the hospital where I cruelly mocked a grieving mother. I read the complaint and laughed. It hurt my ribs, but I laughed. She is trying to bury us in discovery. I told Curtis on the phone. She wants to make it so expensive to fight that we settle. Orissa, Curtis said, his voice tight. You need to come home. You need to see the mail. What is it? It is a letter from a collection agency, Curtis said, regarding a default on a personal loan, $50,000. The loan you refused to sign, I asked. Yeah, Curtis said. Only, according to this letter, I did sign it. They attached a copy of the promissory note. Rissa, that is my signature. It looks exactly like my signature. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Delaney hadn't just bullied him. She had forged his name. She had traced his signature from a birthday card or a check, lifted it, and applied it to a high-interest loan document. This was no longer a civil dispute about money between family members. This was criminal forgery. This was identity theft on a federal level because the lender was across state lines. Bring the letter to the hospital, I said, and bring the police. That afternoon, the investigation took a turn that even I didn't predict. My forensic accounting had uncovered a recurring payment to a title holding company in Arizona. I had assumed it was the Clearwater house Maris mentioned, but when the police detective ran the title company, they found something else. The deposit for the house hadn't been made in Delaney's name. It had been made in the name of a shell corporation. The owner of the shell corporation, Luma Whitmere, my 2-year-old daughter. Delaney had used my daughter's social security number, which she must have memorized from the insurance forms or birth certificate, to set up a dummy corporation. She was buying risky real estate in the name of a toddler to shield the asset from her own creditors. If the deal went south, the foreclosure would be on Luma's record. My daughter would have started her life with a bankruptcy before she could even read. I sat in the hospital bed, holding the printout the detective had given me. The rage that had been burning inside me turned into something cold and solid, like a glacier. Gavin Rourke called my room directly, bypassing the blockade. I picked up. Mrs. Whitmere, Rourke said, his voice shaking. I am withdrawing as counsel for your mother, but before I go, I have a duty to convey an offer. She is willing to walk away. She will drop the lawsuit. She will sign a quitclaim on any rights to your accounts. She just wants the eviction stopped. She wants to stay in the apartment. She says if you do this, you will never hear from her again. It was the off-ramp. I could end it right now. I could save the legal fees. I could go home to Curtis and Luma and pretend Delaney Oakmere never existed. All I had to do was let her keep her luxury apartment and her pride. I looked at the document with Luma's name on it. I looked at the forgery of Curtis's signature. Mr. Rourke, I said. Yes, he asked, hopeful. Tell her no. Mrs. Whitmere, consider the cost. I have considered the cost, I interrupted. The cost of letting her get away with using my daughter as a human shield is too high. I am not settling. I am pressing charges for every single count, forgery, wire fraud. identity theft of a minor, tax evasion. "This will destroy her," Rourke whispered. "She will go to prison." "She built the cell," I said. "I am just locking the door." I hung up. 2 hours later, the notification came through on my phone. It was an email from the special agent in charge at the regional IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Subject: interview request, recase file. Oakmere. Dear Mrs. May Whitmere, regarding the evidence submitted, we would like to schedule a formal interview. Please bring all original documentation regarding the unauthorized accounts and the Clearwater entity. We are opening a joint task force investigation with the FBI regarding the identity theft components. I looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The storm I had summoned was finally here. It was a hurricane of subpoenas and indictments, and it was heading straight for the penthouse apartment where Delaney was currently packing her bags. She had wanted to be taken care of for the rest of her life. I closed my laptop. "Well, Mom," I whispered to the empty room, "you are finally going to get government housing, just not the kind you wanted." The conference room was small, windowless, and smelled faintly of lemon polish and stale anxiety. It was not the dramatic courtroom setting Delaney Oakmere would have chosen for her final act. She would have wanted mahogany rails and a jury to charm. Instead, she got a beige table, fluorescent lights that hummed like trapped flies, and a silence so heavy it felt like it had mass. It had been 3 weeks since the accident. My ribs were still wrapped, a constant, dull ache that reminded me of the physical toll, but my mind was sharper than it had ever been. I sat on one side of the table. Curtis was to my right, his hand resting protectively near mine. Elias sat at the head of the table, his cane leaning against his chair like a sheathed sword. Across from us sat Delaney, Maris, and Gavin Rourke. Delaney looked diminished. She was wearing a Chanel suit, but I recognized it from 5 years ago. Her hair was perfect, but her eyes were darting around the room, assessing the threats. She still thought this was a negotiation. She still thought she could charm or bully her way out of the trap she had built. "This is ridiculous," Delaney started, her voice pitching up into that practiced tone of aggrieved motherhood. She smoothed her skirt, looking at the federal mediator and the bank's fraud investigator who sat at the far end. "We are a family. Families have disagreements. My daughter is clearly still recovering from a traumatic brain injury and is confused about our financial arrangements. I am just here to help her sort this out." She looked at me, her eyes glistening with summoned tears. "Orissa, honey, tell them to stop. Tell them you authorize me to manage your accounts. I know you are angry about the hospital, but don't let strangers destroy us." It was a good performance. 10 years ago, it would have worked. I would have felt the guilt curdle in my stomach. I would have folded just to make the awkwardness stop. But today, I didn't feel guilt. I felt the weight of the file folder in front of me. I didn't speak to her. I looked at the mediator. "May I present the timeline?" I asked. The mediator nodded. I opened the folder. I didn't use adjectives. I didn't use emotional language. I laid out the photos and the transcripts like tarot cards of damnation. "Exhibit A," I said, sliding a paper across the table. "Timestamp January 29th, 6:42 p.m. I am in the ambulance, being stabilized on a backboard. This is the text message sent from Delaney Oakmere's phone to mine. Transfer the money. My card cannot be declined." Delaney flinched, but she kept her chin up. "I didn't know the extent of your injuries." "Exhibit B," I continued, ignoring her. "Timestamp January 29th, 7:10 p.m. I am in the trauma bay. Nurse Janelle records my vitals. I am barely conscious. At 7:12 p.m., a login attempt is made on my banking app from a device registered as Delaney's iPad. The attempt fails because I had revoked access 2 minutes prior. "I was checking your balance to see if you could afford a private room," Delaney interrupted. "Exhibit C," I said, my voice dropping an octave. Timestamp 7:35 p.m. Delaney Oakmere enters the trauma bay. She does not ask the attending physician about my prognosis. She does not ask to see my x-rays. Instead, she instructs her attorney, Mr. Rourke, to prepare a biometric authorization override. I looked directly at Rourke. He was sweating. He was staring at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. And finally, I said, sliding the last photo across. It was a still frame from the hospital security camera. It showed Delaney holding my limp hand, a wet wipe in hers, scrubbing my index finger while Rourke held the tablet. Assault and attempted identity theft of an incapacitated person. Delaney stared at the photo. Her face went pale. "I was helping you," she shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. "You ungrateful child. I was trying to make sure your bills got paid." "No," Elias spoke up. His voice was like a gavel striking wood. "You were trying to pay for the house in Clearwater." Elias slid a single sheet of paper toward the center of the table. It was the bank confirmation from the fraud department. "This is the transaction log," Elias said. "At the exact moment you were trying to force Arissa's fingerprint onto that screen, a pending charge for $20,000 was waiting in the queue. Destination: a shell company controlled by a predatory lender. You weren't paying Arissa's bills. You were paying a loan shark to save your own skin." Delaney froze. The air left her lungs. She looked at Maris. "Maris," she hissed. Tell them we were doing it for the family trust." Maris looked at the photo of the loan shark payment. She looked at the federal investigator taking notes. She looked at the empty chair where her future used to be. Maris stammered. "Maris," I said softly. "The investigator knows about the text messages. He knows you moved the money to the crypto wallet. If you speak the truth now, it is cooperation. If you lie, it is conspiracy." Maris started to cry. It wasn't the pretty, manipulative crying of our mother. It was the ugly, snotty crying of a terrified 24-year-old who realized she was the fall guy. "She promised me," Maris sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at Delaney. "She promised if I helped her get the signature, she would pay off my student loans. She said it was just a bridge loan. She said you wouldn't even notice the money was gone because you had insurance coming in." "Maris," Delaney screamed. "Shut your mouth." "She told me to impersonate the HR rep," Maris wailed. "The dam breaking. She gave me the script. She made me call Curtis to check the death benefit. I didn't want to do it. Rissa, I swear." The silence that followed was absolute. Delaney sat there, her mouth open, betrayed by the daughter she had trained to be a duplicate of herself. Gavin Rourke stood up. The sound of his chair scraping against the floor was loud. "I am withdrawing as counsel," Rourke said. His voice was tight. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of files. He placed them on the table in front of the investigator. "These are the original loan documents Delaney Oakmere provided to me. I was led to believe they were legitimate family contracts. In light of this testimony, I believe I have been used to facilitate a crime. I am turning over all evidence to the prosecution in exchange for immunity." "Gavin," Delaney gasped, clutching his sleeve. "You cannot do this attorney-client privilege." "Privilege does not cover the commission of a future crime," Rourke said, pulling his arm away as if she were contagious. "You forged a signature on a federal loan application. Delaney, I am not going to prison for your shoe budget." He walked out. He didn't look back. Delaney was alone, truly alone. She looked at the mediator, then at the investigator, and finally at me. The mask fell away completely. There was no more victim. There was only hate. Pure, distilled hate. "Are you happy?" she whispered. "Are you happy now you have destroyed your mother? You have humiliated me. You have taken everything." "I took nothing," I said calmly. "I just took back what was mine." The investigator cleared his throat. "Mrs. Oakmere, based on the evidence provided, including the testimony regarding the shell company opened in the name of a minor," he gestured to the Luma file, "we are moving forward with the seizure of assets." "Seizure?" Delaney blinked. "What assets?" "The contents of the apartment," Elias said. "The jewelry, the designer wardrobe, the car, It was all purchased with misappropriated funds. It is all proceeds of crime. You cannot take my clothes, Delaney shrieked, standing up. That is my property. And the apartment, Elias continued. Relentless. The trust has terminated your lease for cause. You have 24 hours to vacate. The locks will be changed tomorrow at noon. Where am I supposed to go? Delaney screamed. Her voice was raw, stripping the paint off the walls. I have no money. I have no credit. You have frozen everything. You are an able-bodied woman, I said. You can work. She looked at me like I had suggested she eat glass. I am 55 years old. I am a socialite. I don't work. Then you will starve, I said. Delaney lunged across the table. The security guard stepped forward, blocking her. But she strained against him, her face twisted into a mask of fury. I gave birth to you, she screamed. The same old weapon she had used for 30 years. I made you. You are nothing without me. You owe me your life. I suffered for you. I bled for you. I stood up. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I looked her in the eye. You gave birth to me, I said, my voice steady and cold as the grave. But you sold me by the month. You didn't raise a daughter. Delaney, you raised a retirement plan, and the policy just lapsed. She stared at me, panting, her chest heaving. She looked for a weakness, a crack, a flinch. She found none. Get her out of here, the investigator said to the guard. They led her away. She didn't go with dignity. She went screaming curses, threatening to sue, threatening to tell the press, threatening to burn the world down. But as the door closed, the sound cut off. Maris sat at the table, weeping into her hands. I am sorry, Rissa, she mumbled. I know, I said. I slid a document toward her. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a repayment plan. You are going to get a job, Maris, a real one, and you are going to pay back every cent you helped her take. $50 a month if that is all you have. But you will pay. Maris looked at the paper. She nodded slowly. She picked up the pen. 2 months later, the envelope arrived in the mail on a Saturday morning. It was plain white, with a government return address. I opened it in the kitchen. Curtis was making pancakes. Luma was in her high chair, smashing a banana into her hair. I pulled out the check. It was a restitution payment from the asset seizure and the whistleblower reward for the tax evasion case. It wasn't a fortune, but it was significant, $85,000. It was enough to replace Luma's college fund. It was enough to put a down payment on a new house, one with a security system and a heavy gate, far away from the penthouse district. But more than the money, it was what it represented. For the first time in my life, my financial worth wasn't being drained away to fill a black hole of narcissism. It was staying here. It was feeding my family. Is that it? Curtis asked, flipping a pancake. Yeah, I said. It is over. Delaney was working as a hostess at a mid-range chain restaurant 3 towns over. She lived in a studio apartment. She had tried to sell her story to a tabloid, but without the legal documentation to back up her claims of elder abuse, they had passed. She was just another bitter woman with a story nobody believed. I picked up Luma. She giggled, sticky hands patting my face. We are going to be okay, I told her. The door opened and Elias walked in. He came for brunch every Sunday now. He didn't bring envelopes or legal threats anymore. He brought donuts. He looked at the check on the counter, then at me holding Luma. You did good, kid, he said. I had a good teacher, I replied. We stood there in the sunlight, the 4 of us, a real family, not bound by debt or obligation or fear, but by the simple, quiet choice to show up for each other. I looked at the camera, breaking the 4th wall for the final time. I didn't lose a mother. I lost a parasite. I didn't lose a family. I just stopped paying salaries. And in the end, their greed didn't destroy me. Their greed paid for my freedom. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a long journey from that hospital bed to this moment of peace, and I appreciate you walking this path with me. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening while driving, cooking, or maybe taking a walk? Please let me know in the comments below so we can connect. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to the channel Juliet Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Your support means the world to me. Stay safe, and remember, you are not an ATM. You are a person.